guys, Chef Andrea here, and I'm just doing a really quick video. I have a longer one that's called Carbs, a Love Story. I've got a longer one that is called Gluten Glory, and I've got a longer one that's called All-Purpose Flour versus other types. But I wanted to throw this little quickie in here that I'm just calling processed bread. And what I want to share with you is that the No Bread campaign that's been going on in our country is a heartbreaker for me. I've always had a hard time understanding it, in part because I don't understand how you're living without bread, but in part because I didn't understand how bread became so villainized in our country. Why was it such a bad guy? And so I listened to my customers, of course, watch a lot of videos, listen to a lot of people, read a lot of articles, hear a lot of debates. And here's what I want to share with you is that, in my humble opinion, the fail of breads that seems to be a really United States, by the way, issue, where people tend to jump on that bandwagon is when they are looking for a place to blame, put some blame on weight gain, bloating, and discomfort, stomach discomfort, things like that. Maybe there's some foggy brain, there's some fatigue, some of these sort of generalized things that can happen with us. And I think that for various reasons, bread and carbohydrates as a category, but bread just as a whole became the thing that we started pointing our fingers at and saying, if you just eliminate all carbohydrates from your diet, and so therefore also you can't eat any bread ever, you'll feel a million times better. And a funny thing happened in the United States when we did that as a whole. And for a brief time, a lot of people were absolutely zero carbs and 100% no bread. An interesting thing happened. A lot of people lost some weight and they reported that they did feel better. They had more energy. I think that I know that the research that's starting to come out now, and I mean right now, guys, this is brand new stuff, like the last 3 years, which is pretty short in the terms of this sort of craze of no bread eating. The research that's starting to come forward now is suggesting that, in fact, there was a bit of an epidemic of irritable bowel syndrome, so we'll call that IBS, which of course would lead to discomfort, bloating, weight gain, and that when we eliminated breads and carbohydrates in a large amount from our diets, we improved. The thing that is starting to become clear now is that the category of breads and carbohydrates is very specific and almost incredibly specific to an American diet. And that is processed or store-bought carbohydrates and breads. So depending on where you are in this country, bakeries that are doing artisanal sourdough, long rise, slow production breads are fairly hard to find. Here in my own area, super duper hard to find. So hard to find, it's worth making your own bread here. There are a few spots, but they are not easy to get to. And so that certainly isn't something that you can do 2 or 3 times a week to just sustain, your grocery needs, for example. It would be a specialty thing that you would travel for. And I want you to have access to healthy breads daily. And the way to do that really for most of us is going to be to make them ourselves. What is the problem with the store-bought breads? What's happening with that? The problem is, like I said, I think it's country specific. I think this is an American problem, although I've heard from some in the UK that like American style fast processed sandwich breads are starting to sort of take over the shelves there as well. And they're going to have to battle their own war with this. But I showed you in another video a link kind of, I just showed you a picture on my phone to this video that's on Epicurious, and it's this video. And this video, this is a food scientist, and he breaks down what every word on the label of a loaf of American grocery store bread means. And I humbly believe that what this man has in his hands is absolutely why we as Americans as a whole have been struggling with the carbohydrates and the breads that we've been putting into our body. It is not because bread is a problem, and it is not because wheat is a problem for those of us who do not suffer from celiacs. It is because processed foods are a problem. And when he breaks this label down for us, what I want you to notice if you look that video up or just go to the grocery store and read the label for yourself is that the ingredients on his bread are wheat and water and sugar. And then there's like 17 other ingredients. Sugar is the third ingredient. It's the third. There are a lot of loaves of bread at the grocery store that sugar, I have discovered that sugar is the first ingredient. There's more sugar in some of those loaves than there is flour. Okay. Why do processed grocery store breads have so much sugar? Simple, because they need to last for 3 months on your shelf. That's it. That makes them incredibly shelf stable. There's another story behind adding that much sugar to bread production, and I'll give you the very short version here. Yeast is well fed by sugar. And so if I throw a lot of sugar at a bread that I'm making, it will rise very, very quickly. And I can have this bread ready for you in minutes. In minutes. If you've ever made bread from scratch, you got to cover it up and let it rest for an hour and then carry on, right? You eliminate that if you just shove as much sugar as that yeast will possibly react to. And yeast is a living bacteria like you and me, and it eats sugar like you and me. So if I throw a ton of it at it, it gets very active very quickly. But often in grocery store breads, I have found that there is more sugar than flour on the label. Just think about that. And it is this chef's humble opinion, although I will tell you, now that you're hearing this, if you want to start doing some deep dives, I'll give you some resources. But this chef's humble opinion is that what our bodies are reacting to in the United States is not bread. It is processed bread. And more specifically, it is the raw sugar, the added sugar that is loaded into those processed bread formulas. So, and that was a 15 grain bread. It is labeled as high fiber, heart healthy, ADA approved, AMA approved, not ADA. I don't think they could go there, too much sugar. AMA approved, American Heart Association approved. Like, it's labeled all over as the most healthy thing ever. But read the label. The third ingredient on it is sugar. So when you make bread via one of my recipes, often we do throw a little bit of honey or sugar at it, and it's always to support the yeast, and it does bring out a little bit of flavor. But based on the ratio of how much sugar I have to flour and water, if I have 4 ingredients, the sugar will be the very last thing. When I have 25 ingredients and sugar's number 3, that's a bag of sugar. That's what that is. So the higher up in the labeling that an item is how much of that item is in there. And when sugar is in the first 3 ingredients, that product is sugar. And so I just wanted to share that. My humble opinion is we've given a really bad rap to bread, and what we need to really be villainizing, what we really should have our pitchforks out at, are grocery store processed big brand breads. Be a label reader. Look out for those processed breads. If you are missing breads in your diet and have struggled with IBS, you are not celiacs, but you have dealt with some IBS and decided to go off bread, but very sadly so, and you want to bring it back to, the short story is make a loaf from scratch. Watch what happens. Okay. That's the spiel on that. Listen, join me for more details about some of this in Carbs, A Love Story, Gluten Glory, and then we'll talk about flour varietals in AP versus others. So have a great, delicious day. I hope you'll eat some really good homemade bread soon. Watch out for the processed foods, and we'll catch you next time.